we're not raw enough. We're not entrepreneurial enough. We're not cruel enough to respond to a crisis fast and effective. Make no mistake, we do live in a postmodern virtual reality already. The roughest, toughest election process in the world, which was actually designed to send someone through the fires before he gets the most powerful job in the world. The institutional design of the world is based on nation states and only on nation states. The UN is weak. There's no global institution that can actually have teeth in the game. That's the void. That's the problem we have to solve. And it takes probably generation of crises and generations until the majority is willing to actually build an international institution that can regulate national identities. I like the invention of dual use, the phrase itself. Yes. Immediately we came up with something which is civilized. We don't call it defense, because for years we actually said in our policy that no defense investment. For our industry, the usage of dual use means that the word software is now dual use in a way. Everything has a defense aspect. Not only cybersecurity, because everything is data, and data is part of the conflict these days. So it's a very interesting scene, because it is now laying the foundations of the 21st century. AI is like internet. It changes everything. It turns every cornerstone of every business now. And can it remain? No, it has to change something. So it needs reflection. It's by definition a disruptive approach to anything established. We're not investing into political agendas. We're investing into actual technology that solves a problem. I don't like solutions which involves, let's tell people that that's the way they have to behave. And then there's the Central European genes, which is whenever you achieve success, someone will fuck it up. The government will take it away, history will take it away, you will be, you have to escape your own home country and stuff.
We are a bit paranoid.
We are. And I don't really care about whatever I said, because in our business, Day One Capital and all the other investors in Europe, we're focusing on the guys who are exceptional, who are not part of this, who are not like this.
You're again the elite.
Exactly. So I can describe the scene.
Yes.
But I'm investing from 1,000 applicants into 5, 7, 8 companies per year. They are exceptions, not products of these determinations. I have to go with the rogue ones. I'm way less afraid of investing into a rogue player, which is a strange guy with strange behavior. Obviously, you're not invest into lunatics, that's the fine line. But if AI looks at the profile of a lunatic and the counterintuitive great entrepreneur, it's very close. And then remains the big question. Can you modernize the societies? So the real issue to me of this age is whether Western societies that in the last many hundred years, not only in the Industrial Revolution, it starts from the Middle Age, build a certain form of texture of society, a distribution of responsibilities and laws, and the whole institutional design of the Western society, which was excellent in supporting innovation and being able to change with the technological shifts of the ages. Can they do it now?
Welcome to Budapest Recursive Community. Our next guest is György Simo, a managing partner at Day One Capital Fund. György began his career as a journalist before joining the Magyar Telekom Group, where he played a key role in launching Origo, Hungary's leading internet portal. In 2003, György became the CEO of T-Online Hungary and took executive roles at the Magyar Telekom, overseeing media acquisitions, growth initiatives in media, e-commerce, and data services. He also founded the company's innovation hub, Kitchen Budapest. György is contributing to the Hungarian innovation ecosystem with his strong skill set in guiding and supporting entrepreneurs as they scale their businesses. György, it's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We have been encountering ourselves many times at conferences, having always this slightly deep conversations, and I would guess this closeness comes partially because you used to be a journalist before that.
Yeah. We always try to save the word in those conversations. And that's partly because I think both of us are in this business for more than just, the actual investing part. It's about something more.
I can also imagine that you would be more comfortable in the position of asking the questions, not necessarily answering them.
Yeah, journalism was a long time ago.
Yeah.
My major was history and sociology. But I was never, I always liked to approach issues from an alternative angle.
Yeah.
So at sociology, I studied alternative media, like everything which is not mainstream. Fanzines, small booklets, whatever. And so it was kind of natural that it led me to a group of people who started a pirate radio station in Budapest. And later on, I joined an alternative weekly newspaper which covered lifestyle and politics at the same time in Budapest. And in the early 90s, it had a certain fame. So it was a very exciting period of my life.
This is also the time before the whole disruption actually happened in the media space. I'm sure that for you has been exciting to follow how journalism was completely transformed since the 90s.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about it? I mean, when you look at it and how you used to do journalism before and what you're currently reading, watching, consuming, how is it affecting also the development of society, politics?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about it?
Well, it'll take the whole hour to discuss this. It's still, I think, a passion of mine. Even though my views changed a lot. I'm a big consumer of media. I don't like media anymore. I think I had also a certain part in this because I was one of the investors of a huge Hungarian social media site. I tell you a bit later about this. So when I started, it was the end of communism, the end of that one-party system. So media plurality was an issue for us. I was 20 years old. But mainstream media seemed like stupid for me all the time. So whatever alternative to the existing mainstream media, whatever alternative represented new values and progressive values, I liked. So I liked the progressive radicals, and I also liked the American media, New York Times, Washington Post, and stuff. Because introducing that into Central and Eastern Europe, that was an alternative. That was introducing quality journalism in Hungary. So it was a little bit of an awkward mix. We had a very rock and roll newspaper, but at the same time, when I came back from New York, I established a special section about campaign coverage. There was an election in Hungary. So for 1 year, I was running a very conservative, American-like campaign section with the idea that we cover all sides equally and we're neutral in the political part. So it was a very strange mix. Later on, I had a chance to spend a few weeks at the Washington Post. So I was always wanted to be a player in establishing factual and investigative journalism, to establish factual and investigative journalism in Hungary.
Yeah.
But there was a point when I had a choice to choose between joining the newly established commercial television station, RTL, in Hungary, and being an editor of a 60 minutes like program, which was just an idea, but it was totally a blank sheet. Or joining Telecom, which invited us to advise them on internet media. And internet media in 1996 was the par excellence alternative media.
Yeah.
It came from nowhere. It had a vision. It had an ideology to change society and everything. And I believe that. It came from the 60s. I mean, internet is a utopian thing from Californian idealists. And I was into it. So I chose the internet part, which led me to the professional career of establishing the largest portal in Hungary for Magyar Telekom, which was the incumbent telco, and working with internet technology and media from that point on. And in that, I had a chance to invest into EVIV, which was a local startup. It was Facebook in Hungary. And it was in sync with Facebook. So it started at the same time.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And it reached 4.5 million people at the top.
It's huge.
In a country of 10 million.
Yeah.
So even when everyone thought that Facebook has already won, Facebook had 1.5 million, this service had 4.5 million customers. And as Magyar Telekom, I acquired it into our media portfolio. And that time, the reason I'm telling this, that at that time I was also utopian and optimistic about social media. So to your question, right now I think that the enthusiasm with I embraced 500 channels, plurality of cables, information choices, social media, blogging and everything, now turn into a very sour view of how the public structure of discussion, of debate, the media, has changed. And I think it's one of the main reasons why democracies are in trouble, why it weakened the texture of our society, because it took out the filtering effects. And even though I was always working with underground or organically growing or base democracy governed media outlets, I'm an elitist. I love The Economist, I love the Financial Times, I like quality journalism at its top.
Yeah.
And I think that now that everyone is loud and crying, and everyone has access to all kind of information without the proper context and skill set and filtering, that led to the current polarization of and the devaluation and inflation of politics at its best sense.
You mentioned that you were influenced in the beginning by the American style of doing journalism, and in the Anglo-Saxon tradition, there is also the point where media outlets would endorse a certain candidate.
Yeah.
And we saw it again also during the American elections. At the same time, I think the Washington Post and Bezos refused to endorse any of the candidates.
Yeah.
We have another tech founder in Twitter, in X.
Yeah.
How do you think the tech world or tech entrepreneurs can maybe contribute to a more, how to put it, fair business model for journalism? And I'm not saying media, because this is different.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's still hard to see because Musk is an exception, even though a powerful exception. For decades, the tech billionaires, the new generation of American entrepreneurs, were actually playing a very progressive role. They share the utopian values of the origin of the internet. Bill Gates, the others, they wanted to change the world for the better. By the way, in a way, probably Musk wants that, but you never know.
Yeah.
And they did not resemble at all to the villains of the Hollywood movies. There was always a villain who wanted to take over the world, take over communication, media, and everything. And then Musk is probably the first one who is moving in the space from being Iron Man or that villain of the, I don't know, Spider-Man movies.
I don't know if he's the first. I'm thinking of Peter Thiel as well here.
Well, I mean,
He's
Peter
doing it
Thiel
in
is just a wealthy
different way.
investor embracing a radical candidate. He's not moving the needle. He's not in the public space because he's way weaker in that than Musk.
But he's moving his pawns actually in the political
Yeah,
space.
but,
I mean,
yeah,
obviously.
but the old billionaires did the same.
Yeah.
So this changing the world for the better gave space to, first of all, a classic rich man attitude, defending my interests. I mean, Musk is defending his interests in many ways by embracing Trump against, and I'm being neutral here, against some what he considers a leftist correction of regulation and governance, which he doesn't like. So it's just the classic billionaire game.
Yeah.
The interesting part is the media. Media neutrality is not
A value anymore.
a thing anymore.
Yeah.
But if you think closely, embracing a candidate is in principle against media neutrality.
Yes.
So what we take as granted as the quality practice of the New York Times and the American quality media, it's only a 50 years old story from the 60s when they actually created these norms of separating opinion from facts, being fact-based, double-checking, investigative journalism. These are conventions of a certain era, and those conventions are gone, cannot be maintained
Yeah, we're speaking now of opinion-based journalism.
everywhere.
And we see now, I think, with this experiment that has been conducted in the States for quite a long time, how this is affecting the democracy. I mean, for me, this is
frightening.
the result and frightening part.
Yeah.
I mean, we still don't have it as much in as much opinion-based journalism in Europe as in the States. There are still media outlets who, at least to the front, play it neutral, who try to find some kind of objectivity, consider different perspectives, maybe not necessarily in Hungary.
Well, Hungary was, I mean, the best tradition of Hungarian media was always opinionated. It was the essays and the editors.
I see.
It's just tradition. And in the US, you still have those big media outlets. But the society is step by step polarized. And the issue is that the institutional design of the media scene as a whole is broken. And we don't see what is the new one that provides stability. And second, the credibility of the players is broken as well. So half of the country doesn't believe those newspapers because they think it belongs to the other half of the country.
It's us and them polarity.
And that's the issue, because for a society to work, there has to have a common denominator, a common values. Call it a constitution or call it the credibility of the speakers, of the public speakers. Now, who do you listen to? If you're a person who believes that Tucker Carlson has a point, you think that the New York Times is only masquerading his same opinion into a different, narrative, which they call factual journalism. But hardcore right-wing readers think that it's the same opinion, just in a different form. And Tucker Carlson and all those guys at Fox News are just brave, honest guys. Elon Musk is an honest guy, a straightforward guy, because he thinks that everyone can say whatever the hell they want to say. And that's, they see his takeover of X as a liberty movement, as a freedom of speech movement. So while obviously, if not everyone's opinion is equal, there are stupid people. There are very stupid people. There are aggressive people. And we know from history in Europe that if someone has a conviction strong enough and gets a microphone and understand the mastering of mass medium, it can lead to a disaster. So there is a need for filtering and regulation, but it's against the freedom of speech principle of the American Constitution, and they don't find a way out right now. So I don't have a solution. I share your...
I was hoping that you would have it.
No, something will happen and has to happen, because the old institutional design won't work anymore.
Yeah.
My solution, no, I don't have a solution. My expectation is that the problem that is caused by technology can only be solved by technology. So one of the areas I look at when we see new startups and stories, I have a special interest because of my background to any idea which tries to use this huge data processing power of the new technology into fact-checking, correcting media, helping people to get a context, because I understand the postmodern, and in many ways I like it, but facts are sometimes facts. So we don't see where the line is, but in our life we all know that at a certain point we know the difference between a lie and the fact. And then you do something. But if you actually make it totally disappear in the public discourse, that's what you see now. So maybe technology can help, on a large scale society to kind of like navigate in this new information world.
I also studied partially sociology and also media sciences, and I'm not so sure that we know what a fact is. Human nature, as it seems, is much more drawn to the need for belonging to a group, to a society, and it affects how we define truth, or I would not even call it truth, I would actually call it a consensus.
Yeah.
Yeah. In many ways, what we perceive as true, as a fact, is actually a consensus between us as a group, or a so-called subjective reality. Yeah. So if we agree that this candidate will be like this, or will be bad, or will be good, this is how we would also see facts. And since we want to belong to a group, even if we have a different opinion, we would still comply with the general perception of the others, because we much more want to be part of a group. And this is what I find scary. So in a way, I believe that we would be able, in our educational systems, and also in the way that we, grow the next generation of people, of entrepreneurs, to have maybe people who are less conformists, who are ready to be more rebellious or to have a critical thinking, because this is what it takes. You need to be comfortable of being in a way a bit cast out or be an exception from the group, so that you can develop an alternative opinion or protect yourself from confirming or complying too much with the general perception of the others when it's not true. And yeah, this is what I find scary.
But this, I mean, it all goes back to
If we're going
the
there.
issue of identity. I mean,
Exactly.
and make no mistake, we do live in a postmodern virtual reality already.
Yes.
It's just not obvious. I mean, on our phones, in the games, in the Hollywood movies, in the way we construct the world around us based on a whole lot of information from everywhere on the globe. We live in a virtual reality. And the identities that helped us navigating in this, I belong to this group and this group has these and these values. That's the hard part. Going back to the American part, being an American, that was a consensus.
Yeah.
Like have the president, that's the roughest, toughest election process in the world, which was actually designed to send someone through the fires before he gets the most powerful job in the world, he or she.
Yeah.
But obviously, apparently it doesn't seem to be a she. There's a lot of element in this Trump story today, and media is just one of it. Identity is the other one. People are not comfortable in the US to be identified with the new role of men in a modern society. Urban societies are already embracing it. People in the rural communities are very far from that. So they have an issue with a female candidate. And there's a lot of issues at the same time, but it all goes back to identities. We, in the startup world, we're usually embracing people, supporting people, investing into companies that has a global ambition, that has a global mindset. If I talk to you, anyone else in the community in Warsaw, in Munich, everywhere, in Western Europe, in the US, even in Silicon Valley, it's basically the same group of people.
I've been thinking about it. I probably have much more in common with a founder in Sao Paulo than with my neighbor.
Yeah, and in 5 minutes you can have a discussion.
Yes.
So there's a global mindset. The institutional design of the world is based on nation states and only on nation states. The UN is weak. There's no global institution that can actually have teeth in the game. So that's the void. That's the problem we have to solve. And it takes probably generation of crises and generations until the majority is willing to actually build an international institution that can regulate national identities. There are no sanctions. Look at the European Union. Even we all want a stronger integration, but that means that a Bulgarian, a Hungarian, and a German has to vote for a Frenchman. It's not going to happen in this media environment because there's always the debate that he's a Frenchman. So I don't see this overcome before a big crisis, when the crisis makes it obvious that only global institutions, empire-like institutions, can solve the problems of the 21st century. We all use the same devices, everyone looks the same. In Korea, in China, same clothes, same devices, everything, and injected into the local culture. The institutional design is totally national. And that has to change, but it won't change peacefully. So in one way, I have a very dark view of that, because I don't trust mankind to learn these.
How close do you think is a major crisis, as you mentioned?
I'm thinking a lot about that, because as a history buff, and I studied history, you try to understand what led to the First World War. And before the First World War, there was like decades of relative prosperity, industrial revolution, and peace. And even between, the first and the second, there was like 20 years and stuff.
And
so I don't know.
It's interesting.
It can be decades.
I think these wars, they advanced, or they approached societies partially in the beginning in a very imperceptive way. Like they were the signs, but we can actually identify them as signs only after.
Yes.
I think for the societies back then, it was step by step, very unperceptive. In the famous essay, The Banality of Evil. So, very faceless. Yeah.
But I assume that when you ask about a major crisis, you still have a crisis.
I didn't want to mention a third world
yes,
war, but
it was obvious that you had that mind.
It could be. I mean, it could be also something else.
That's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because, nuclear changed the game. So a major crisis might be environmental. Mm-hmm. But don't forget that even a small crisis today is perceived as a world crisis. The crisis in Israel make waves everywhere in the world. An environmental, a small nuclear catastrophe can actually remind the people again how dangerous technology is, and that has an effect on slowing down the powers of conflict. So you don't need a world war to make people understand that there's a crisis, because the global media, anything happen in the farthest corner of the world, it goes through media in 24 hours.
Oh, we saw it with the pandemic. It was crazy.
Absolutely.
Actually, the pandemic was a very interesting phenomenon where for a while, the whole world had one common topic.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah. But we don't know. Did we learn anything from the pandemic? Because that was a global crisis which we were waiting for.
I guess we learned that that's a potential risk that we need to consider, and we need to build, mechanisms to protect ourselves or our societal systems from it. Because I think before the pandemic came, we forgot about this danger, potential danger.
Yes.
Now we are a bit better prepared, I would say.
Or at least the Americans are better prepared. If you look at the geopolitical game, and I think this is not what the viewers expect from a startup investor conversation, but geopolitics plays a big role in our industry as well. The US took a different path after it accelerated the path, the China versus America path for the US. Europe, again, is slow and indecisive, but America is stronger than it has been because it started to build policies around self-sustaining economic models. And that came from the crisis. Slowly, Europe will follow the same because America now elected a president which will push Europe to do the same.
Exactly.
So again, how fast? I don't know. It took like years and decades, these things sometimes, because the conflicts are actually under the cover. big powers only play out the conflicts in national, small, conflicts like in the Ukrainian one. But behind the curtains, I think there's a big geopolitical shift, and it's happening, and it's because of the pandemic partly for other reasons. So that crisis I'm expecting is not necessarily a crisis of enormous scale, but a crisis with an enormous effect on people's perception and mind. Let's not talk about the crisis. You freed the devil in me.
I know, but I would still like to ask you maybe another question related to that. Many tech founders and also people from my bubble ask me often, so up until a couple of days, they would ask me, which candidate do you think is actually better for Central and Eastern Europe and also for the tech ecosystem here in our part of the world? Now, we don't have the choice of the candidates anymore. It's pretty clear. How do you expect a second Trump presidency will affect our potential here in Central and Eastern Europe? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Can you somehow translate this development into some kind of like a prognosis or a trend that you would see for startup founders that they will have to definitely navigate maybe in a different reality? How fast this reality will evolve, I don't know. It will probably take time until we sense it, until we feel it. I guess, and that was surprising to me. I saw so just recently there was a survey in the European countries of how they would vote, which candidate they would choose. And Central and Eastern European countries, they were very diverse, but I would say most of them were actually pro-Trump. Yeah.
You ask a Hungarian.
Do you think that's an informed choice that they made? Is it actually better to have a Trump presidency for our little economies here? And separate from that, is a Trump candidate better for the startup ecosystems and the innovation ecosystems?
Well, the short answer is it's too early to call, obviously, because Trump is notorious about, changing courses and his opinion and stuff. So whatever he said in the campaign might not be turned into policy. By the way, just one side note back to our previous issue. As a good sign of how crooked the actual and old media design is that the polls were wrong.
That was clear that they were wrong.
Yeah, but that's an institution which the whole media relies on, especially the American media. So, and again, technology I'm pretty much sure that some of the guys who actually have large databases of consumers and see interactions and data analytical tools knew it better. So it's not the traditional poll and the media, but those tech guys and tech solutions.
We were joking that actually Polymarket has probably better prognosis than the polls in the States. Yeah,
exactly. I had a friend who had a big social media. So it's too early to call because of Trump's frequently changing his opinion. But there's a difference between Trump as a leader and the policies.
True.
A huge number of people in the United States, many of them entrepreneurs and market players, chose Trump because they thought that he's a lesser threat to their word and to the economy than Kamala Harris. So there's a very strong and normal difference of opinions on how the economy should actually run. Trump is the classic Thatcherian, embrace the rich, encourage the rich to produce And that's good for the economy, and don't mind the inequalities.
Yeah.
So that's the issue. But because the language of modern politics is not honest anymore, you cannot be honest. You actually cannot be honest in this media environment. If you're honest, you're done. Trump is putting up a show for actually large number of folks who couldn't be further away from a market economy, from a talent-based startup or anything, but they vote for him for a different reasons. It's a race for votes. In my view, the biggest issue with Trump is not his policy, which might be good for the startup world, which might even be good for the world in terms of the geopolitical games. He's a strong man, but he's a leader type, for good or bad. But it's on civilization. The premise of global peace was that the countries actually talk to each other, and politics is played by a certain level of civilized manner. You trust the law, so you do not actually. You trust the system of the law. So if the system actually tells that this guy is a felon, you don't elect them. You choose another one. You don't talk to people like that. You don't lie. These are issue of civilization, not issue of policy. Because all politicians lied all the time in the world. Winston Churchill lied. Abraham Lincoln lied. You cannot. That's part of the job. But it's a big difference whether you do that like a lie in your marriage. So it's not okay because it ruins the marriage if it's open. It ruins the institutional design if it's open. Or you call it honesty. That you just tell the truth, you lie, because we all lie, yeah, whatever. And that's what I call the civilization problem with Trump. And I think it has that tone from the top, has longer, it has bigger consequences from the long-term game of how people behave, how countries behave, how institutions can actually build credibility. So that's the soft aura of the presidency. That's probably gonna be tragic around him. Again, that's what the critics call a chaos, and it's gonna be horrible. But if we go back to the issue of the markets, I mean the markets were happy, crazy happy about Trump. Now going back to our neighborhood, Trump means a few of his statements, I think, firmly. There's going to be an immigration issue which will affect people, startup people from other areas of the world.
You sure he's not going?
He might. But I think that, the talent, I mean, the US is actually, the brain drain will continue. That's their interest, and startups are considered as the number one competitive area.
Do you think Europe or Central and Eastern Europe can somehow benefit from that with specialized employer branding campaign for innovators, tech entrepreneurs?
No, it will benefit because Europe very slowly but step by step realizes that it's not competitive with the US, partly because innovation sucks in Europe.
Slowly realizes. I think Draghi's report is now like the Bible for the European.
No. By the way, this Friday, I will host a discussion here in Budapest about the Draghi report's prospects. And I am not sure. I mean, the Draghi report is crystal clear. It starts with the venture capital gap between the US and Europe. But if you see later on to the solutions, entrepreneurialism slowly disappears into some vague policy stuff.
Okay.
Actually, can we translate the findings of the drug report into work. And that's what I mean, slow and step by step. I don't think that Europe is going to be fast in that. Eventually, there will be money poured into the field. That's I know for sure, because it's like defense.
So
this is the number one area.
What you're saying, at least we know what is the problem, but we still are very slow when it comes to realizing which are the effective and efficient solutions, because we don't have much time.
And we don't have much efficiency. If there's inflation or an economic crisis in the US,
it's going to be
the job market in 6 months responds to that.
Yeah.
And as soon as the signs are good, it corrects. In Europe, you can't do that because the job market is defended by a whole set of rules everywhere. So we're not raw enough. We're not entrepreneurial enough. We're not cruel enough to respond to a crisis fast and effective.
But coming back to our economies here in Central and Eastern Europe, are we more agile being, I don't know, maybe smaller economies? Okay, we are very dependent, or most of the countries in Central and Eastern Europe are actually dependent on Germany. Our economies are very much tied to Germany, to the German economy. So a weak German economy would translate into a crisis probably also in most of the Central and Eastern European states. I'm not sure how dependent Hungary is, but I would expect that.
Even more.
Even more, okay. Yes, coming back to our region, let's say inflation will probably rise in most of the countries. Can we maybe adapt our labor markets and faster than the older parts of Europe?
First of all, we're still dependent on the older parts of Europe. So their response, if we cannot act independently from them. The reason this region is growing faster, I'm not a macroeconomist, so I may be wrong, but the reason this region is growing faster, because old Europe used it as the back office or the industrial base or the labor market base for their economy.
By the way, I just caught myself, saying, older parts of Europe actually.
Well, yeah, we are the oldest one. Yeah.
We are the oldest one.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sorry for interrupting.
You're absolutely
you.
right. Mm-hmm. So Western Europe.
Yes, Western Europe.
So these countries cannot grow independently. By the way, Trump will change that as well. So he might have a big bet on Poland, for example, because Poland was always very open to the American military interests.
I think he was also pretty much protective also of the Three Seas initiative that we saw, pretty much also spearheaded and led by Poland. Okay, I'm sorry.
So it all depends on his game. He might choose to defend American interests at the border of Europe, which is Romania, Poland, these countries. And defense is going to be a big driver of economic growth in the next few years. Now there's open talk that the 2% percentage of GDP is not enough, and Europe has to spend 4%.
What are the official NATO requirements?
2.
2. Okay.
That's 2, and that was Trump's in the first Trump administration. That was his big game, that he called out the European countries. America is not defending you because you're not spending as promised.
Yes.
And it had an effect. And by and large, it seems like on this, Trump was justified. Now, yesterday, the head of NATO, a liberal Dutch politician, said the 2% is not enough. We probably has to double it. So that part will have an effect on the economy of these European countries.
Do you see defense tech and dual-use startups as an upcoming trend.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable. And there are
It's
going to be
inevitable.
probably also a lot of public resources who are going to be invested in the private sector so that we develop certain technologies, I guess.
Absolutely. I like the invention of dual use, the phrase itself. Immediately we came up with something which is civilized. We don't call it defense because for years we actually said in our policy that no defense investment. So now it's dual use, but whatever.
What about nuclear technologies?
I mean, the data centers of...
Now we're also more comfortable talking about this, right?
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
The AI platforms, OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, are all considering small nuclear fusion reactors because they cannot actually power the data centers. So that product was around for 10 years, or I don't know, 20, I don't know. Now it's a hot issue because these guys are buying it. So nuclear is good. So a lot of things around dual use and AI. The point I want to make that me usually approaching things from the alternative, defense is not arms. Because the warfare is not going to be necessarily
on the field. Yeah.
On the field. This Ukrainian thing is, in a way, I think it's an exception. Because you can attack... Ukraine was probably the last country which was not a NATO member in Russia's, like a serious country which is not a NATO member. Any other country is a NATO member. That's nuclear warfare. It's not going to happen. Which means the next war is going to be aggressively conducted through cyber means, through media means. So that 21st century chaos-driven warfare.
Do you think there will be some renaissance when it comes to media, propaganda, journalism, mass communication?
Absolutely. And
Because
that's where dual use is getting interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you have a fact-checking algorithm for your local media, that's part of the defense mechanism of your country. That's under the supervision of the defense ministry. I'm just talking about an imaginary situation. The whole civilian infrastructure is going to be part of the game. So democracies has to arm themselves by arming the everyday life. So dual use is way wider than a gun, which can be a cooking device.
I guess supply chains also.
Exactly. Logistics, geopolitics, everything is part of the game now. And media information and disinformation. And that all be backed by technology. So for our industry, the usage of dual use means that the word software is now dual use in a way. Everything has a defense aspect. Not only cybersecurity, because everything is data, and data is part of the conflict these days. So it's a very interesting scene because it is now laying the foundations of the 21st century societies and international order. And that's how I see it. So I think that startups are still in the forefront of this. Technology is in the forefront of this. Money is going to be available for that because in many aspects, companies and lawmakers understand that that's going to be a primary field of competitiveness.
You're talking about public money, I guess, in this case.
Okay. Well. I mean, EU money will... if you listen to the EU strategic initiatives, it's dual use, it's innovation, it's competitiveness by digitization and technology. So, and what the EU can do, unfortunately, their first reaction is more money. They less think of the aspect of attitude and know-how. So being competitive requires more than money.
But are the net payers in the European Union ready to spend the money? Because
Yeah, they
I
will.
think we're also now a bit at the brink of how much we are ready to do together. I'm afraid that we will get into a much more self-protectionist kind of policies where everyone will be out there for themselves. Or
Where
each member.
you have a big, I think, an excellent overview of the regional ecosystem. So think of the first 5, 10 top startups from the CE region. Where do those guys actually have headquarters? Where do they live now?
I guess it's, yeah.
They live in London, they
Yes.
live in the US. We're lucky enough if they also spend a lot of time in their home country because they
Or have their R&D here.
or they have something here.
Yes.
But there's no way you can actually run that global company only from CE. So the net payers, the Western European companies are always, the beneficiary of East European innovation
sense.
and labor force.
Makes sense.
So they will do that for sure. And again, this is a global community. The schism or the border is going to be more interestingly drawn between the US and Europe.
Yeah.
Because Europe wants to be more protective of its talent in the future. The US might be, just neglecting enough to have rules against migrants, which for a while might make it more difficult for European companies to go there. Or the opposite, they can become more aggressive of brain drain. You don't know that, but the traditionally neglected border between US and Europe is going to be more visible because of the Trump administration and because of the geopolitical shift.
How do you evaluate the role of the Middle East venture capital or capital systems on Europe? Because I also see them being much more active. They do want to be at the forefront or at leading somehow innovation developments in different spaces, but especially ESG. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
And energy transition, obviously, yeah, makes sense.
And
This is where they also
I mean, China is way more cleaner now. They were able to actually shift a public traffic into the EV age in 20 years, which we didn't do and which the US haven't done. So these countries have ambition, they have tons of money, and many of them, I don't want to get into names because I'm not an expert on this, but kind of like following the Prussian way of development, which is you have an authoritarian country, but you want to modernize it, so you modernize it with huge effort by actually importing the very best high-profile state-of-the-art technology. Sometimes it's lunatic, like the Saudi Arabian city, which might or might not happen. But in many ways, that money is looking for modernizing the infrastructure. And then remains the big question. Can you modernize the societies? So the real issue to me of this age is whether Western societies that in the last many hundred years, not only in the Industrial Revolution, it starts from the Middle Age, built a certain form of texture of society, a distribution of responsibilities and laws, and the whole institutional design of the Western society, which was excellent in supporting innovation, and being able to change with the technological shifts of the ages. Can they do it now? Some of the critics say, no, it's done. It's the East now.
Well,
I still believe
we're dying
that
out. I mean, I'm looking at the demographic crisis, so most of the new generations will actually be born in so-called developing countries, so they will come with their own mindsets.
well,
And they will also affect-
the new leader of the British conservative, again, conservative party, is a 44 years old Nigerian woman who was born in the UK but grew up in Nigeria at the age of 16. And now he's not the head of the Labour Party, not the head of the Migrant Party. She's the head of the Tories, with a conservative view on families and migration. So a society does not equals the identity of the individuals. These societies were able to integrate waves of changes and waves of new population. That's the Western model. The question is, will it prevail after this huge clash again, which is like the Cold War? There will be another decades of competition between authoritarian Eastern models of society and the Western ones. But what will happen to that? So the technology of the Saudis will be excellent, but the Western society's model is in Israel, and that country of 9 million is actually ruling a region of hundreds of millions with power and technology and innovation. It's so obvious now. So can they actually build that new technology into a stronger, more reformist, changed society? That's an issue to me. But they will certainly be around. That money is going to be around.
They'll probably have to, because I guess you need this kind of mindset in order to do innovations. Yeah? Otherwise, you just follow those who are, the out-of-the-box thinkers, the open-minded.
Yeah.
But, listening to what you're saying and how you reflect on that, I'm thinking that it's probably also super exciting for you to invest now in this space, because there's so many hypotheses that you can actually build and bet on.
Yes.
I guess there are also certain limitations of what you can do with day one, given the stage that you invest in the fund size. There are so many interesting actually fields where right now capital can be bet on. But which are the verticals or the hypotheses that you're most excited about or bullish about?
Yeah, it is true. I mean, we were just investing into an HR tech company. That was a field we traditionally were not fond of.
Why are you fond of now?
Because of the founder and because of the new level of that's one of the areas I would name in my answer. The way a company actually is using data analysis, so the quality of data-driven businesses gives us, I think, provides a lot of opportunity. So in the last few years, it was data in general.
Yeah.
Now it's the quality of the UX, the quality, the way you actually use it, the tailor-made it to the particular problem you're trying to solve. So data enrichment, the quality of you actually approach data is now more and more important. So if you find founders who are in the field of data, it's not boring, because they might come up with a solution which is way more powerful than anything on the market. And they have a goal. So that's how we approach this HR company. The founder is exceptional, and their solution is winning over clients like that. So we like that. Again, AI is like internet. It changes everything. It turns every cornerstone of every business now. And can it remain? No, it has to change something. So it needs reflection. It's by definition a disruptive approach to anything established. In the next few years, I'm expecting the HR AI human interface to be critical. So this co-working of human intelligence with AI. No, I'm not really into the dystopian, part of it that AI. I've done that with internet and I failed. So I was utopian for decades now. It's time to be more realistic. I think wherever AI empowers a group of people to do their job, like unproportionately better, that's the most interesting part. Not where AI is actually replacing human. It's not gonna be that important. We spoke about dual use. We spoke about the security element of information management, public information and stuff. So I think that's going to be a huge space. Every now and then, sustainability is still a very important issue.
Don't you feel like we are a bit now distracted from?
We are at the top level.
I mean, we still have the energy transition problem, and it's pretty much related also to the evolution of AI technologies or AI
exactly
platforms or even data centers. So we need to solve the efficiency of how we produce energy before we move into an AI era. I would say.
I think we are disrupted in a way when it comes to the attention economy. So there's only 1 hour when you watch news. I'm kidding. There's 24 hours when you watch news. But now it's about war, stress, whatever. Propaganda. So there's a lot of disruption. But I also believe that the fundamental drivers are still there. And don't forget, a startup is good when it solves a real problem, not a perceived problem, a real one. The problems are there. So maybe less of Greta Thunbergs and more of a new innovation now, how a battery can actually be 40% more effective. That's we're not investing into public speeches. We're not investing into political agendas. We're investing into actual technology that solves a problem. So if someone comes up with an issue around energy management, an issue about countering the green force, the environmental effects on green in an urban environment, and that's also data. And if someone comes up with a solution for that, that's good. I don't like solutions which involves, let's tell people that that's the way they have to behave. Because this is...
Like the metaverse?
Yeah. You have to deselect, I do deselect plastic from communal waste.
I see, okay.
But I don't think that that's the way we can, because that's what the Trump election is about. 54% of the country doesn't necessarily vote for what is better for the economy, because it's a complex issue. But if they have an incentive system, and that's why it's not Trump what interests me. He's claiming that he will put Elon Musk into being ahead of a program that slaughters the government spending programs. Now the media listens to, it will slaughter, the human parts, the social part of it. But I believe that it will also slaughter bureaucracy as well. So interesting forces are in work here.
But what you're hearing also is that people have had a bit too much of a normative voices in their head, too much regulation, too much of someone telling them what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't catch this one, but that's a very good one.
I mean, on the one hand, we're all in favor of entrepreneurs. It's a disturbing scene when you see the number one entrepreneur on the world. I mean, you like it or not, Elon Musk is a complex figure. But he's the one who's actually catching the racket while Boeing is leaving his astronauts in space because they can't get back to Earth. So the guy has huge potential, that's obvious. He's also not very civilized. Again, the issue with them for me is the civilization part. And I think it's very important. I don't want to underestimate that. That is a very important issue. But Margaret Thatcher, Donald Trump, these guys are unleashing raw power for entrepreneurs usually, which causes a lot of tension and conflicts in society in short term, but in midterm, they might change dynamics in technology and economy. It's just one theory. I'm just trying to counter the usual wisdom of this is all threatening. It's threatening in many ways, but in terms of that...
We're going to probably hear about this one in the following weeks, again and again from the main media. So it's actually interesting to hear, as they say, a contrarian hypothesis.
But on the other hand, he's also want to put in charge this Robert Kennedy guy into the health administration. Now, health is not necessarily entrepreneurial.
I mean, I would not agree here. We saw that actually most of the formations in the AI space in Central and Eastern Europe in the past couple of years are in the space of health tech. And I guess maybe it is because we are not as heavily as regulated as other countries, or there is a bit more space for innovation here.
I agree with that. I'm just saying that when health is... To be cruel in health is less healthy than in I don't know, in commerce or something.
At the same time, it's a bit riskier because you really have to be safe and secure and healthy. Yeah.
Exactly.
So if there is a problem there, you're done. So you don't have that much space for mistakes.
Exactly. So that's why I'm saying that reliability and risk-taking is different in the health sector than in like space technology or whatever, and the frontier technologies.
True.
So there will be a lot of good things and a lot of brutal failures, but that's also entrepreneurialism if you compare it to our favorite narratives in the conferences. So all in all, I was surprised not to be scared enough 2 days ago.
I was also surprised that it didn't affect me as much as 2016.
Yeah,
maybe
it
because
was strange.
We've been through that before. Maybe because it was also expected. I actually had a hilarious day. I don't know.
Really?
On the day after the elections, I don't know why I was in a very good mood, although it didn't necessarily comply with the morals that I have developed over the years as a European. Yeah. But
I don't know, it's a very risky game. But since I don't have a vote in the US, I'm kind of like putting myself back into my comfortable, curious mode.
By the way, I always thought that maybe we, as being so affected by American policies, we should have a vote.
Well, you're right.
It's very strange that now at this point the world doesn't have a vote on who is the president.
Yeah, my father always wanted to solve the problem of Hungary in the 70s and 80s, that we just have to, join as the 52nd state of the United States.
And maybe that's also a disruption that needs to happen in the institutions. And how do we build our political systems as a globalized society? We cannot have voting systems which are limited only to a bunch of idiots in the rural areas. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's interesting, by the way, because some of the people wants to have a European unity. And we already have a European vote and the European institutional design.
Yeah.
It might be the case that we will join the United States of America and Europe earlier by that design than building up the European design. It might be faster.
It's also an interesting hypothesis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say there are innovative and creative founders out there listening to our conversation.
I'm sure.
What kind of problem would you mostly hope see solved or at least worked on by an entrepreneur here in Hungary, in Central and Eastern Europe? Is there a shout out that you would like to make? Hey, please, can someone start looking into that?
You know, it's interesting because this question keeps coming up. And so a Central and East European founder, let's say a Bulgarian founder, I mentioned this earlier, that they're really part of a global community. So first of all, they are a startupper in the world. So the problem they are actually, the world they are living in, the problems they are working on, are the same problems that everyone has. The same level, they have to be at the same level of understanding technology, AI, everything, global issues, like the guy in the US. So at the first level, the problems are the same everywhere. And the potential, we encourage them to deal with those problems because those global problems we can build global companies on global problems.
In global markets, exactly.
Second, they live in the European Union, which has its own smaller ecosystem. The valley is different than the Israeli ecosystem.
Sure. In
terms of, like, Manchester United is different from I don't know, what is the Sofian football team? CSKA Sofia.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
I was faster. I'm still a man. So, performance, everything is different. The European ecosystem in some way influences these guys. Partially the available money, the available VCs, the available markets, home markets, how fast they can grow. These are differences. And also the attitude. Entrepreneurialism in Europe is different from the US. So on a statistical basis, the best founders are the same, but on a statistical basis, I very much liked when Peter Thiel was in Budapest and gave an interview, and he said, it is often said that the European entrepreneurs are afraid of failure. And he said, that's not the issue. Yes, Americans embrace failure and stuff. What he was shocked by, that European entrepreneurs often has a fear of success. They don't want to be that successful. They don't. Imagine, going back to Trump, imagine that guy. 78 years old, working so hard for the first job from a human perspective.
Yes.
How much he wants winning and success to sacrifice basically everything. Yes, he can go for more than any other president in the world, but still, it's a captive entity. So wanting success, that part of cultural difference, those cultural differences I think affect European entrepreneurs in general and affect Central European entrepreneurs in particular, because tradition of entrepreneurialism in our societies have, on a statistical basis again, effect on the guys here. So being a global guy, being a European guy, being a CE guy, there are different levels.
Why do you think European...
But at the same, it's all, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just saying that whoever we deal with, all three are there. So it's not an either or question. If I invest into a guy, I invest into a guy who is dealing with global problems,
Yes.
being part of a European culture, and using the resources in Central Europe.
Why do you think we have, in comparison, let's say, to US entrepreneurs, less passion for success? I mean, this is how I would phrase it if we go with Peter Thiel. Where is this
We're just
coming
comfortable.
from? We just enjoy work-life balance more, or what? Or
I
do
mean-
we define success? Do we need like a new definition of success? Do we need more competitiveness on a personal level, more...
The design of the American society is very much centered around competitive skills. Generations after generations come into the country ruthless, sometimes with money, more often without, but ruthless. They have to establish themselves. So they start to compete. Every family, the part of the reason why Trump won is that it's changing with maturity of the society. But normally, if you look around to the left, to the right, and ask around in your family, there's someone who made a fortune of entrepreneurial background. Started a business, became rich. Failed, then successful. The McDonald's movie, you probably have seen that. The guy who actually took over McDonald's from the founders. So failed. He was a small care guy, but he wanted something. That drive is there in every element. In the rapper who from the street became a billionaire in 4 years and stuff. So it's more widespread that attitude that you work and you became huge.
And also this narrative, maybe. So it is also a question of the story that we tell ourselves. You know, thinking now as a storyteller, someone who is doing media,
Exactly.
maybe it is a narrative that we don't tell ourselves.
Yeah, that's true. Also in Europe, talking about Western Europe, we're more comfortable. Aristocracy is a different, we're more mannered, we're more civilized. We're more cultured than the Americans, less raw in statistical. I think this is one of the stereotypes I hate the most, by the way, which I just said. But there's a certain way of like enjoy life. There's more to life than business. That's in Europe's genes. And then there's the Central European genes, which is whenever you achieve success, someone will fuck it up. The government will take it away. History will take it away. You will be, you have to escape your own home country and stuff.
We are a bit paranoid.
I
think when it comes to, running towards success, we're always afraid that there is something around the corner that is going to fuck us up completely.
Yeah.
At the same time, the economic reality that we grew up in made us very creative.
Exactly. And I don't really care about whatever I said, because in our business, I mean, Day One Capital and all the other investors in Europe, we're focusing on the guys who are exceptional, who are not part of this, who are not like this.
You're again the elite.
Exactly. So I can describe the scene.
Yes.
But I'm investing from 1,000 applicants into 5, 7, 8 companies per year. They are exceptions, not the not products of these determinations.
It's amazing because also AI here cannot really help you. I think AI is actually great for us to see the trends, to see the medians and the normal distribution of things. But when it comes to spotting the exceptional, spotting the new trend, spotting the underground that is going to become a mainstream at some point, I think this is maybe something that only we can
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, one of the biggest learning doing this for a decade or more, and I was basically doing it in other jobs as well, like finding talent and building up stories and companies, is that I have to go with the rogue ones. I'm way less afraid of investing into a rogue player, which is a strange guy with strange behavior. Obviously, you're not invest into lunatics, that's the fine line. But if AI looks at the profile of a lunatic and the counterintuitive great entrepreneur, it's very close sometimes. And that's what you refer to. That's where you need to be there, see the small signs, see the small gestures, the half sentences, go into the chemistry of this. But I have learned that most of our founders are unique stories, and sometimes not easily can be easily categorized. And I love contradiction. I love when if I feel something disturbing, because then there's something usually. It doesn't mean it's the only way. Sometimes people just, because that contradiction can be everywhere.
Maybe it wasn't utopia that excited you. It was actually, the contradiction that excited you. Look at that your career at this point. I'm also thinking that in a way you were always also yourself a bit rogue, and going.
Well, I'm a mixture of a very boring bourgeois, so like like standard citizen, law-abiding citizen. Disciplined, and someone who is always looking for the difference.
Okay.
It was interesting because when I went to telecom, the community I was living in was in shock, because telecom meant the boring, the powerful, everything. And I was curious, like going into the French Legion. I mean, I will learn something there. I was the only one probably who was happy to go to have military service, the compulsory military service back in the 80s. Because I felt that, first of all, being part of the elite is not giving you the green card not to do that. And also I was curious of other kinds of people, and that is the point I want to make to your reflection. I'm curious of different guys. Now that Trump's won, I'm curious of what we don't see in him. We, the other guys. I enjoy the Daily Show. I enjoy the good laughs on Trump, but I'm curious of the controversy and that. What is it that we're missing here? And that's I think it certainly helps me in investing into startups.
I was just about to say that this is a very good mindset for being an investor, someone who is looking for the exceptional. György, or Gyuri.
G.
G. It's much
the shortcut,
I don't think
I save you with that.
I don't think that I will be ever fluent in Hungarian, so please forgive me my pronunciation. Actually, at some point at home we had a joke, but I would bring my foreign speaking boyfriends from wherever I used to live back then. And my father was joking that, okay, well, then let's all talk Hungarian because we have the same level.
Yeah. Well, it's a difficult language.
Yes. Thank you for this conversation. I think we completely went off script, but it was much better. This is, to be honest, what I was hoping for.
Really?
Given our conversations in the past.
You know, the boring part in me is did I say day one capital is good?
You are.
Enough?
Probably. I mean, with this mindset, you have to be. I would expect that you're making interesting bets. At the same time, I think it was important to have this conversation, and I think it's going to be interesting also for the people out there, because, you know, I was just thinking now that we're meeting here in a historic moment of time.
Absolutely.
Out there in the center of Budapest, there is the European summit where I think many of the NATO leaders are meeting. Zelensky is probably also still here. Orban is hosting them. It is just a couple of days after the results of the US election have been announced.
Yeah.
Puzzle co-working is being officially inaugurated here in Budapest. So it was very timely conversation, I think, that we had.
Yeah.
Very relevant.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I just made a Facebook post. I was obviously up at night at the US election. That's the old journalist. That's the old journalist in me. And I made a Facebook post, and which I started. We woke up at the side of history, so not at the right side or the wrong side, but at the side of history, because it's obvious that it's a historic moment in one way or another.
It is.
Yeah.
And we have been waiting for it for a long time. I think, you know, just a couple of weeks ago, for me, it felt like there is a certain level of anxiety in the air that has been built up over the past months. And we were all like taking a big breath and awaiting of what is going to happen. So it was a relief at some point. I felt as a relief.
Now we know.
Yes, at least now we know. Now we can start, you know, making some kind of hypothesis and prognosis of what is going to go further. Now, I would be curious, maybe you can also share a bit more about the event that you're planning on next Friday. So it will be more or less an interpretation of the Draghi report where you discuss, okay, what would be meaningful solutions of that? Okay.
What are the possible consequences of the Draghi report? There will be guests. It's an event of the Hungarian Venture Capital Association, and Day One Capital organizes this night. So in the panel there will be my partner Csaba. I will moderating it, so there I will be in your shoes, asking questions, and I try to only ask questions.
Yes.
There will be Balázs Fejes, who is the global vice president of Appam system. Appam is a huge software company in the region. Yes. And Balázs is like me. He's always thinking of these issues. And also have an overview, a global overview with a global clientele. And the third one is one of the best, actually it represents me, this whole panel, one of the best journalists in Hungary, covering foreign policy, European policy. So this is going to happen on this Thursday.
I would be curious to understand which were the conclusions of that, and I would suggest maybe we can then do the conversation on a regional level. I don't know, some kind of like a all-in setup where we bring a couple of people to discuss.
I'm happy to participate.
Yes, I think we need to be much more part of these conversations. How should the solutions look like?
Exactly.
And I'm very happy about the report because at least now this topic is being politicized, especially in our region, much more, as it should be. Topic of innovation, topic of technology, topic of competitiveness on a European level. I think we didn't talk about it enough in Central and Eastern Europe. We were completely overwhelmed by other very banal issues.
And it's very interesting that even though we know that, you know, when it comes to these summits and stuff, I mean, These people talk. It doesn't necessarily translate it into action.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the competitive issue now, from Draghi to Orban to von Leyen to whoever, now they all understand this.
It's time for action.
Yeah. So regardless of their ideological differences or their differences in how a society should be run, they all understand that Europe is in trouble. My biggest issue is whether we way past the inflection point of that. You remember that it was a Hungarian who invented the inflection point theory and the growth. Yeah. And a Hungarian who doesn't want to be called Hungarian after 56, but whatever. So he was the founder of Intel, and he said the very definition of an inflection point is that if you see it, it's already too late. Mm-hmm. So you have to foresee that. Now, the Draghi report in many ways resembles me of we realize we're lagging behind, but it's already too late. So we should see the next inflection point, not this one, which happened a few years or a decade ago. So I'm not very optimistic, but at least now you're right on the agenda and in the discussions. Mm-hmm. And we have to influence that discussion with discussions from the entrepreneurial and startup investment scene, because the Draghi report starts with the venture capital.
Exactly.
So we have to make sure that it stays in the center of the agenda.
And we have a lot of important commissioners, defense, innovation, which are actually from Central and Eastern Europe. This is also a huge opportunity, I think, for us.
Yeah, the influence is way stronger than it was a decade ago. I agree.
G.
Thank you.
Mr. G.
You have to learn
so
it. I mean,
much.
it's the second time I withdraw that.
And if you're just as passionate about innovation as we are, hit subscribe for the Recursive podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. We're everywhere.